Victory interrupted. What should have been a moment of triumph for Spain's national soccer team was cut short when the team's president, Luis Rubiales, forcibly kissed player Jenny Hermoso on the lips while they were celebrating their World Cup win. Hermoso said that the kiss was not consensual, calling it sexist and out of place. She and her teammates and soccer fans across Spain and around the world, they're calling for Rubiales' resignation. So far, he has refused. So what does this moment signify about equality and sexism in women's sports? Let's talk about it. I'm joined now by Shira Springer, a longtime sports journalist and lecturer at MIT's Sloan School of Management, and Akilah Carter-Francique, sports sociologist and dean of the School of Education at Benedict College. She's also a co-founder of Francique Sport in Education. Thank you so much for joining me, ladies.
Thank you for having me.
So, Shira, I want to talk about this article that you recently published about this topic. And I'm thoughtful about how much of us realize that Spain's victory was just overshadowed by this very public controversy.
Yeah, absolutely overshadowed. And it's really unfortunate because it was a wonderful story. The first time that Spain is winning the Women's World Cup. It is a country with a women's soccer program that is on the rise and doing a lot of things right in the development of its players, but completely overshadowed by what happened with that aggressive, forcible kiss on Jenny Hermoso and all the fallout from that. That fallout included Rubiales, the man who kissed Hermoso, refusing to resign, emphatically refusing to resign. That also included all of the players on the Women's World Cup team, the World Cup winning team, saying they won't play again for the national team until there is leadership change within the Spanish Football Federation. And it is ongoing. It has been a very fast-moving story, including earlier today when Jorge Vilda, the head coach of the women's national team, was fired. And part of that was because he was slow to react and speak out against what happened to Hermoso. So completely overshadowed. They should be celebrating what these women accomplished, the advancing of women's soccer in Spain, and now they are mired in lots of controversy with a national soccer federation in transition, major transition.
Akilah, I have to ask you, as we talk about this intersection of sports and culture and this ongoing conversation about equality and equity in women's sports, what went through your mind?
A lot went through my mind. When we look at it from a U.S. perspective, it is a situation of, oh my goodness, but at the same time, we have protections when we talk about Title IX and raising that awareness, when we talk about equity, when we talk about issues of sexual violence and things that happen in sexual harassment perspective. But on a world stage, on a global stage, not every country has that. And then when we start to think about these global leagues, what are those protections? It got me questioning, what are those protections? What are those rules? What are those protocols to be able to safeguard those women, those young women, I may say, as they participate in this high level sport?
Shira, in reading your article here, you talked about what was happening on Spain's team and that sort of toxic sexism that's happening there. And you also compare it or juxtapose it to the women's soccer team and their fight for pay equity in this elite sport. And you say, quote, both teams succeeded in spite of, not because of, what they received from their federations, the organizations that are supposed to protect them. Talk to me a little bit about that. Say more about that.
Yeah, what you have here are federations not supporting their women's programs the way they support the men's programs. And that is everything from the amount they pay the players to the number of people on the support staff to their travel accommodations. It is basically their workplace conditions. They are far below, not just for the U.S. It wasn't just the case for the U.S., but for, I would say, every country around the world when it comes to their women's soccer programs. And in fact, last September, 15 players on the Spanish women's national team signed a letter of protest against both their coach, Jorge Vilda, but also against the working conditions of that team, citing in particular their travel, the way they were treated, the support that they have. So there is a lot of inequity, a lot of workplace conditions. It's not just the toxicity, but it's also this lack of support they are receiving, both financially and I would say physically as well, in terms of the conditions they're practicing in, the conditions they're playing in, and the resources they have at hand to be the best players that they can be and succeed on the field.
And Akilah, I know you write often about not just the intersectionality with gender in sports, but also with race, and how organizations have long since not necessarily protected all athletes in these so-called protected classes here. I'm thoughtful about, not just talking about with women and mothers, and we know how we treat mothers and athletes, but even Simone Biles, who had an amazing performance recently, and her, when she stepped away, said, I need to take care of my mental health. There was a lot of criticism there as well.
Yeah, I think those are so great points, because when we talk about women and their participation, and it's often compared to that of men, and it's almost of this, women are of lesser value in those spaces. And so we see that notion carry over in the culture, in the marketing, in the treatment, and the lived experiences of the women in these spaces and places. But we must understand these women are competing at a global level, at a world level that most of us cannot ever reach. When we talk about the Olympic Games, again, a world level, a global level. So when we see Simone Biles, when we see Naomi Osaka, when we see those individuals say, I need a moment to pause, to rest, to take care of my mental health, to take care of myself in this space, to take care of my child, then we have to respect that. We give the same due, and in many ways, perhaps, ignore in some sense that men are having to do some of those same things because of that female counterpart. But we've got to recognize that these women, this is their job. This is where their place of work is. So to the point of work conditions, to the point of healthy environments, safe spaces to be able to navigate and to perform, it's quite necessary. And so we have to acknowledge, what is the culture of these particular sports spaces, but also recognize that these women, again, are highly talented. And if you provide a platform and a space for them to thrive, then they will. I would say case in point, last week here in the U.S., the University of Nebraska in Omaha played to a sold out football stadium of competition. So we have to know that if you build those spaces and places, these women will thrive, fans will come, support will come. But we have to be able to understand that they are on equal footing as that of men and respect that.
Yes, go ahead, Shira.
I would add, thank you. I would add to what Akilah said, because I love that example of the University of Nebraska and what they're creating there and the culture they're creating there that elevates and highlights women's sports. But let's not forget also that it takes leadership that cares and prioritizes women's sports and sees the value there. And I think that's what you're seeing in the juxtaposition of, let's say, Nebraska and Spain. It's very clear at that university in Nebraska, they respect women's sports. They value it. I don't think you can say the same of Luis Rubiales in Spain, particularly not just because of the kiss, but particularly because of how he reacted afterwards. That there was a sense of entitlement, and that he didn't want to see change, and that he thought this was in some ways acceptable behavior for someone in his position. He's like, look at all the success I've created within the women's national team program. You can't get me to resign. Look at what they've accomplished because of me. And that sense of entitlement and that sense of devaluing what the women bring to the whole situation, it was very prevalent there. And you see the opposite, I think you can say.
And I'm also thoughtful about, millions of people watch these events happening, unfolding. They are the people that advertisers are trying to, seek to consume their products and things like that. Do you think the public pressure and some of the pressure that we saw after the incident with Spain in the World Cup, do you think the public can pressure these organizations to do better, especially now in the time of social media and that also being a driver of the marketplace as well? And I'll ask you first, Akilah.
Yes, I definitely see the public playing a role in that. I see not only the public playing a role, those various media outlets, because they have a power. They have an economic power to say, we're going to remove our dollars and cents from your organization. And that will, and at the end of the day, kind of hurt that economic bottom line and the ability of those organizations to really promote like they want to. In addition, I would say those athletes have a platform. The work that I do in the space of athlete activism, especially coming from San Jose State University and the long legacy of Tommie Smith and John Carlos, is one that athlete activism is here, and it's here to stay. And these women, more than any of them, I would say, women understand the power of that platform. There's a long legacy and history of women advocating for this change. And so the women at this moment, even to Shira's point, last year, raising up and saying, we will not play for unless things are changed, they have that power. And that speaks volumes to not only to those sponsors, I believe, it should speak power to their role in that particular organization, because without players, it cannot thrive. And I think more than anything, it speaks a lot to their courage in that space and their leadership in that space and what that represents for the young women coming up that may be on the playground like my daughter, right? Yeah. And wanting to aspire to these spaces and places. They want to come into a space that is going to be safe. Right. And these women at this point in time, not only from Spain, but I believe around the world, can rally together to definitely make a mark and say, we want change in our organization. Yeah. We want change in our leadership, and we need change in our culture.
Yeah. Well, I could talk about this topic all day long, but that is my time for this segment right now. Shira Springer and Akilah Carter-Francique, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.